So yesterday we talked about why we practice to develop concentration, and we discussed the conditions that were really important to have in order to attain serenity, and differentiating attaining serenity from just developing our daily concentration. Okay, and differentiated not just daily concentration, but we can develop our meditative concentration without attaining serenity right away. Because if we don't have all the conditions, then let's not expect to go into deep states of samadhi, but we can still improve our concentration on a daily basis by doing the meditations, that stress stability, mental stability, or stabilizing meditation. And we talked about our posture, our physical posture, and then we also talked about the session and how to structure your session with taking refuge and generating the altruistic intention, so you know what your path is and why you're following it. We talked briefly about the 7 limb prayer to help purify our mind and create merit. And then there's a couple of other verses that I wanted to just mention because they're also very good on page 29. So after we do the 7 limb prayer, before we actually start the session, it's very helpful to think of the lineage of practitioners that preceded us, that go from our own teacher all the way back to the Buddha. And when we think about the lineage, it gives us a lot of inspiration, because then we realize that this is a tried and true method that originated with an enlightened being and then was passed down and actualized by his disciples up until this day. So that gives us a lot of confidence in the method and inspiration in doing the practice. Whereas if it's just some kind of spiritual tradition or meditative technique that somebody has developed, last month in order to market special price for you, then we don't have quite so much confidence in the method. Yeah, I mean, it's just some ordinary being who developed it, so, yeah. Whereas here, this is something coming from an awakened being, passed down through a lineage of people who have duplicated that result. Okay? So, the section that says requesting inspiration at the bottom of 29, those two verses are very helpful to recite. Usually when we take refuge in bodhicitta, going back to the beginning, we visualize the Buddha surrounded by the Buddhas and arhats and other holy beings in the space in front of us. And then, do the 7 limb prayer and so on. And then here, when it says requesting inspiration, the first verse says, "Glorious and precious root Guru, sit upon the lotus and moon at my crown, on my crown, guiding me with your great kindness. Bestow upon me the attainments of your body, speech, and mind." And so at that point, we imagine that on the crown of our head, there's an open lotus flower and a flat moon seat, just like you see, in the paintings. Many of them, there's a lotus and moon. Some of them have lotus, sun, and moon. Some of them lotus and sun. But, like Maitreya there has lotus and moon. Then we imagine a duplicate of the Buddha coming on the crown of our head, facing the same way as we do, and kind of inspiring us, looking over us on the crown of our head. And we're requesting, guiding me with your great kindness, bestow upon me the attainments of your body, speech, and mind, which include samadhi and serenity. Okay? And then we make another request to the whole lineage from the Buddha down to our present teacher, saying, the eyes through whom the vast scriptures are seen, supreme doors for the fortunate who would cross over to spiritual freedom, illuminators whose wise means vibrate with compassion. To the entire line of spiritual mentors I make request. Yeah, and we imagine when we do that, that light comes from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, you know, in the space in front, and also from the Buddha that's now on our head. And so this really inspires us greatly, because we feel like, oh, I'm following in the tradition of the Buddha and all these centuries of great masters. And if they did it, I can do it. Okay? So it isn't a thing of worship. It's, you know, for the sake of worship or anything like that. It's a thing of really seeing that we're practicing a valid and reliable method that other people have actualized and that we can trust, and requesting their inspiration and guidance as we go about practicing. And that helps to, you know, because lots of times we ordinary beings, we feel like we're kind of all alone in the world, you know, especially in our country. People feel so much, because of the emphasis on the self and being an individual, we often feel like, gee, I don't belong anywhere. I don't know how to relate to people, and, you know, kind of, yeah, where do I belong? And here, when you do these prayers and you think of like, wow, you know, all these people that came before me who did this practice, you know, and I've studied the teachings and I trust them because I've tried them out and have conviction in them. And then you feel like, oh, you know, I'm part of a stream of practitioners originating with an awakened being, you know, and so I can practice just as they did. I can generate the same realizations as they did. No. And so then we don't feel like we're all alone in a cold, uncooperative universe that doesn't care beans about us, but we realize that all these practitioners who came before us really care about us, you know, and they preserve the lineage so that we would have it, and they wish us well in our meditation. And so this is again something that helps meet some kind of internal need that bolsters our confidence and our enthusiasm to practice. Okay? As you start delving into the Buddhist scriptures and study more, and you study some of the texts that these great masters wrote, and wow, it's like, whoa, you know, you get a taste of what they're saying, and it's really amazing. Then, of course, your faith and inspiration increases. When you don't have that, and you haven't done that study, you don't know who all these people are. You know, it doesn't matter so much, but when you really, it's like nowadays, if you read a book by an author, that a Dharma book that really inspires you, you know, it kind of wakes you up. So it's similar to that. Yeah. Okay, so, and then after that, you start your session, and like I said yesterday, there's two mental factors that are really crucial during your session, and the first one is mindfulness. And here, mindfulness does not mean just bare attention on what is happening in your body and mind. That is what the word mindfulness means in Mahasi Sayadaw's Vipassana method, and that's what the word means in, you know, they took that, the people who teach Vipassana and who teach you know, John Kabat-Zinn's method and all those things. That's what they're taking mindfulness as, is bare attention. But there's another meaning to mindfulness that you find quite emphasized in the scriptures, which is mindfulness. Actually, the word mindfulness also can be translated as memory or remembering. So it means holding in mind something that you've already know in such a way that you don't get distracted from it. Okay? So when we're doing stabilizing meditation to develop concentration, we want to, in the case of using the Buddha as our object of meditation, look at the picture, look at all of the details, okay? And then recreate that image in our meditation. And our mindfulness is what remembers what the Buddha looks like. It's what holds that conceptual image, that mental image in our mind in such a way that we don't start thinking about pizza and football. Okay? It holds the image, in the mind, and the stronger our mindfulness, then the more vivid the image is, and the more engrossed we become in it, and the more attracted we are to it. Okay? So with mindfulness, you have to have familiarity with the object of meditation. Yeah, so you have to be able to look at the image, look at the picture, and then close your eyes and duplicate that, and develop familiarity in your visualization. Okay? And then to remember that. And I think it's also important when you visualize the Buddha to remember that the Buddha is looking at you with 100% acceptance and great compassion. Yeah? And for some people, that's really hard to imagine. You're sitting there meditating, and it's hard to really imagine looking into the Buddha's eyes because, wow, nobody's ever looked at me with 100% acceptance before. If the Buddha were judging me, I would know how his face looked. And I know how to look in the eyes of somebody judging me and how to be defiant and, tell them to, yeah. But how do I look in the eyes of somebody who totally accepts me without judgment? What does that expression on the Buddha's face look like? Yeah. What does it feel like to have somebody look at me with compassion? Yeah. And so that's something that we develop in our meditation as we're visualizing the Buddha. And when I mentioned yesterday about kind of side benefits that come from using the Buddha as our object of meditation, I think this is one of them. Is that we really, it very much changes our psyche to imagine somebody looking at us with acceptance and compassion. And sometimes at the beginning, it's hard for us to imagine. Yeah? Which is why we need to do it. Yeah? Just because something's hard doesn't mean we avoid it. It's often what we need to do. Okay? So, we create that image. And there's the Buddha, looking at us with acceptance, with compassion. Yeah? And that image is so attractive, when you get into it. I mean, the Buddha's peaceful eyes, his peaceful posture. Yeah. I mean, you think of Rambo, and then you think of the Buddha, or you think of Batman, and then you think of the Buddha. And, just their body language is conveying some different kind of energy that is going to influence you in a different way, isn't it? Yeah? So that really helps. It's an image that, at least I found myself, draws me into the meditation. It's like, oh, I want to keep visualizing this because it's interesting and it feels good to visualize this. Okay? So that's what I mean about it kind of draws you and it helps you to focus on it. So you remember that. So you go over the details, what everything looks like, and then focus on the whole image, as best as you can. If one part of the body becomes especially strong, you can zero in on that and maintain that, but be aware that there's the rest of the body around. It's in the same way like you may be talking to a friend, and you may look at their eyes, but you're aware that they have a rest of the body even though you're not looking at it. It's not just eyes in the universe floating, or something like that. So, you may focus on the Buddha's face may become very clear, but you're aware that, there's a whole body there. And try to make the visualization out of light, not like a metal statue or a three-dimensional paper image, but something made of light that's very brilliant. And when you really get into the visualization, what you also do is, because the Buddha's body is so brilliant, there is light radiating from it, these light beams going out everywhere. And you imagine that on each light beam, there's another tiny golden Buddha going out into the universe to touch different sentient beings and heal their misery and lead them on the path to awakening. So that's quite a beautiful image, with this golden light going out and sending Buddhas into the universe for the benefit of sentient beings. Okay? So it's very important at the beginning of your session to have strong mindfulness. If you just say, okay, there's the Buddha, then you're going to get distracted real easily. Whereas if you really take the time at the beginning to go over the details and tell yourself, I'm really going to develop my mindfulness, I'm going to be aware of what the Buddha looks like, and really focus on that at the beginning, that helps your session a great deal. Okay? And then periodically during your session, there's another mental factor called introspective awareness. Sometimes the Theravada translators translate it as clear knowing. What it means, it's in this context, is it's kind of like a little part of your mind that's a little spy that's checking up. Am I still focused on the Buddha? Or am I thinking about my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my job, whatever entertainment I watched last night? Am I falling asleep? So this introspective awareness kind of just out of the one corner of your mind kind of checks, am I still on the Buddha, or am I off? Am I still on the Buddha, but maybe the clarity of the images is fading. So then if the clarity of the image is fading, I have to go back and renew my mindfulness and make it brighter and, place my mind on that image. If you're off thinking about some other object, then introspective awareness, has the little alarm bell that says, okay, gotta come back. And then you bring your mind back to the Buddha, again restore your mindfulness. Okay? If you're falling asleep, introspective awareness says, oh boy, come on. And then we got to wake ourselves up, come back to the Buddha. Okay? And so we continue like that throughout the session. And, we're going to get distracted. We're going to fall asleep. I'll talk about all these different distractions in a moment. That's normal. Yeah, we're ordinary beings. Don't expect yourself to go into deep samadhi instantaneously. But when these things happen, then you recognize them, you bring yourself back. Okay? And so that's why they call it practice. Meditation practice. Practice means we do it many, many times. We become familiar. We create a new habit. Okay. Then, at the end of our session, we dedicate the merit. So those are the 2 verses on page 30. Yeah? And so this way, with a motivation at the beginning, a dedication at the end, then we created virtue, and we created merit, and then we dedicate the merit towards the highest enlightenment, not just to winning the lottery, or having your kids graduate from a good school, or, whatever it is, some worldly aim, but really for the highest awakening of all beings. Okay, so that closes the session. And then, like I was saying, it's good to do short sessions with a very short break between them. Yeah? So during the break, you open your eyes, you look around, then you come back. Yeah, don't do really long sessions when you're doing serenity meditation, because then sometimes your mind becomes quite restless or too dull, and then you start forcing yourself to concentrate, and then your mind becomes unhappy, and you don't want to leave your meditation session with a feeling of unhappiness. So it's better to have short sessions where you feel, some sessions you do better than others. That's natural. That's okay. Don't judge your sessions. But after a session, you just realize, oh, I did that. That's one more drop in the bucket. That's good. I'll continue on. And so you feel, it's good I did what I did. And then when it's time to come back after, a 2 or 3 minute or a 5 minute break, or a 15-minute break, then you do. And that way, your enthusiasm is upheld. Whereas if you force yourself to just sit there and everything's hurting, then you're not going to want to sit again. Okay? So we have to know how to treat our mind in a gentle way. Now, in terms of pain, yes, that happens, doesn't it? Yeah? We have bodies. And we have bodies under the influence of afflictions and karma, created by ignorance and polluted karma. So, of course, sometimes our bodies are going to be comfortable, and sometimes they're not going to be comfortable. What else is new? Yeah? So, instead of, getting bummed out when there's some pain or some discomfort and saying, oh, this hurts so much, I can't stand it, this is unbearable, nobody else has ever hurt so much, I can't stand it, get me out of here. Just relax a little bit, and it's a good time to observe the difference between the physical pain and the mind's reaction to the physical pain. Okay? Because there's a big difference between the two. Yeah? There's the raw physical sensation, which is simply that, a raw physical sensation. Then our conceptual mental consciousness makes a story about it. If I sit in this position 1 minute longer, I am going to be permanently crippled. Yeah? Does your mind say that to you? Yeah? Sometimes your knee hurts, your back hurts. If I sit like this 1 minute long, there is going to be so much irreversible damage that I'm not going to be able to walk. Yeah. All my back injuries for the last 3 eons are going to come back and plague me. I've got to get up right now. Yeah. So really watch the difference, just the physical sensation, and watch the mind's stories. Yeah? About the doomsday stories of, great physical incapacity. I know this is going to start the chain of events that's going to lead me to be wheelchair bound by the end of the year. You know? Or whatever it is. I mean, our mind is very creative, especially when it concerns worrying about our own body. Don't you think? Is your mind creative in worrying about your body? You don't worry about my body. Yeah, you don't worry about if I'm uncomfortable, if my knees hurt, if my stomach hurts. You never think about that. Do you? Yeah, unless it influences you. Oh, her stomach hurts, therefore she can't come to the hall and give teachings. Oh. But, you know, it's not like when your stomach hurts. My stomach hurts. You know? Okay? So just notice a little bit the eye grasping. You know, notice a little bit the self-centered mind and how it makes a big deal about things. Yeah, and then that can really help you differentiate the raw sensation from your mind stories. And then you realize the mind stories are simply the mind stories. That's all. You know, there's not going to be irreversible neurological damage, you know, if I sit like this one moment longer. Okay? So, you know, you just kind of relax a little bit. If the pain is like intensely severe so that you can't concentrate, shift your position a little bit. Yeah? But just be aware that it's very difficult to find the perfect position. And I think part of this is especially at the beginning of the practice because we are not used to sitting still. Yeah. In your family, how often did you see your parents sitting still and still being awake? Yeah. When we think, did we ever see any example as a child of an adult sitting still and being peaceful? Not on the computer, not doing this, not writing this, not reading that, but just sitting there being peaceful. What example do we have as a child? Cocktails? Sitting there being peaceful? Okay? So, you know, to recognize, okay, this is something new, and we have to create a new image. Maybe we're the first one in our family to learn how to sit still. And our body is unfamiliar with it. You know, the subtle energies in our body don't know how to just be calm, because we're so used to moving about and dancing and this and that and hurrying here and there and walking quickly and climbing mountains, playing music, dancing and everything, and then to sit still. You know? It's like our physical energy doesn't know what to do. And I remember one of the first retreats I did, it wasn't the first, but one of the first. And, you know, I was sitting and my right knee killed me, you know, and it seemed like I had to move it quite often. And I finally realized it wasn't really the pain in my right knee. It was this restless energy in my body. Yeah, that I just had restless energy. And because I wasn't used to sitting and being calm. And so then you start to establish a new habit of sitting and being calm, and your internal energy learns what that feels like and learns how to do it and learns that you don't need to be moving and thinking and seeing and hearing and doing all that stuff all the time. Okay? But it takes some getting used to. Okay? So give yourself some time to get used to it. And remember that everybody else is having that same problem. Yeah? Because one of the things that happens at the beginning is we compare ourselves to everybody else. You know? And then we criticize ourselves. Look how straight so-and-so's sitting. Oh, I can never sit that straight. Oh, that one hasn't moved since the beginning of the session. I'm twitching all the time. That one, oh, so peaceful. I'm full of anger. I'm such a failure. Always. I can't do anything right. I can't sit right. I can't meditate right. Oh. And then we get into our familiar mental sequence of beating up on ourselves. Anybody have that problem? Okay, so, don't compare yourself to anybody else. Everybody's having the same things going on, yeah? So just relax, do your practice, don't judge yourself. Okay, so it is good in the break time to get some exercise, to walk, to look long distances, because that stretches your mind out when you look long distances. Gives some expansive feeling to your mind. If you do prostrations, it's good for purifying karma. It also, moves your body in a good way. Yeah? So do Tai Chi or do yoga or, some kind of movement that helps your meditation, and do that in the break time. And, that's one reason why we do the walking meditation in the break time. Interestingly, in Tibet, the Tibetan tradition, they don't usually teach the walking meditation so much. And I think that's because in old Tibet, they walked a lot. Anyway, they didn't need periods of walking meditation. Yeah, because they didn't have the wheel in old Tibet. So if you wanted water, you walked for your water. If you wanted food, you walked for your food. Everything was carried by walking. Okay? But in the other traditions, they really taught a lot about walking meditation. Some traditions teach doing it very slowly. Like in the Theravada, they usually teach doing slow walking meditation. In the Chinese and Japanese tradition, very often they have a slow version, but they also have a fast version. And you're walking very, very quickly, because circumambulating a Buddha image, because it, gets your chi kind of in order. So it's very helpful to do something like that in the break time. Yeah, don't be a couch potato. I say this every retreat, and then every retreat in the break time, I see all the couch potatoes. Maybe in Chenrezig Hall we won't have any couches. Okay, so then another thing that's important to understand in doing meditation to develop serenity is there's a couple of different things. There's what we call the realms or planes of existence, and then a second thing is the spheres of consciousness. So when we talk about the realms or the planes of existence, we're talking about the kind of body a living being has. So we're in the human realm. Okay? There's the animal realm that we see. In other lower realms, there's the hungry ghost or preta realm. There's the realm of the hell beings. Going up on the ladder, there's the realm of the celestial realm. And within that celestial realm, there's many different levels, many different kinds of celestial beings. Okay? So that's in terms of the body, the aggregates, especially the body, that somebody is born with. That's the realm of existence that you're in. Sometimes we talk about 5 realms: hell, this is going up, hell, preta, animal, human being, and celestial. Sometimes the celestial realm is divided into 2 with the demigods and then the celestial beings, so that makes 6. Sometimes they talk about 3 realms: the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realms. Okay? If you're talking about the desire realm, that includes all the living beings whose minds are very preoccupied with sense objects, with objects of sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Okay? Do we belong to that realm? You bet. Okay. How about animals? Yes. Okay. So, so the desire realm has beings that are very involved with the physical sensations of their body, and very much in sensual contact with the external environment. Then, if we're talking about 3 realms, above the desire realm is what's called the form realm, or the material realm. And these beings have, they still have a body, but it's not, their body isn't quite as heavy and thick as our body. And they are born in that realm because of deep states of concentration. So, the Hindu gods Brahma, Ishvara, Vishnu, all these Hindu gods are born into this form realm, from a Buddhist perspective, okay? And so they have deep concentration, but they still have form, they still have bodies, okay? Within the form realm, there's 4 different levels. The 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th levels of concentration. Okay? Or the Pali term is jhana. The Sanskrit term is dhyana. Yeah? So dhyana, if you say dhyana in Chinese, it's Chan. If you say it in Japanese, it's Zen. That's where the name Zen came from, because it's referring to states of meditative stability, meditative concentration. Okay? So within the form realm, there's 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th dhyana. Then above the form realm, there's called the formless realm. And those beings have such deep states of concentration that, they're fully, totally immersed in their object of concentration from the moment they're born there until the moment they die, never leaving that state of concentration. And they don't have any contact with sense objects, and that's why it's called a formless realm. They don't have a gross body. So there's no contact with sense objects. They just dwell in their own deep meditative states of samadhi. Okay? In terms of gaining the realizations of the path, using our serenity to reinforce bodhicitta, using our serenity to, or using our concentration to reinforce bodhicitta, using our concentration to, to combine it with insight and focus that on the nature of reality. For there, the most, the best states of mind happen to be in the jhana realm, the form realm. Okay, not in the formless realm, because if you're in the formless realm, then, you can't think about anything. You're just so immersed in your concentration that there's nothing else going on. But before I get into that, okay, so that's what I just described there about the realms of existence or the planes of existence is talking about chiefly where a being is born and the kind of body, that they have or the realm that they're born into. Then we can also talk about the sphere of consciousness. Now, most human beings have a human being sphere of consciousness. If you're in the form realm, most form realm beings, they have a form realm sphere of consciousness. Same with formless realms, okay? This sphere of consciousness is talking about your level of concentration. So it's only talking about your mind. So if you have a human being, a meditator, who's a human being in the human realm, in the desire realm as they start out in their meditation practice, and that's why we're so distracted by desire, objects of desire when we sit down to meditate. But somebody who practices well and is able to release a lot or suppress the gross attachment to the objects of sense desire and develop concentration up to the level of serenity. Serenity being where you have suppressed the 5 hindrances, which we'll get into later, and you suppress the 5 hindrances, and your mind is very flexible and quiet, and you can keep it on an object of meditation for long periods of time. Okay? What serenity, that mental state, if you're going to map that on to the, I'm trying to explain this so it's simple. It's actually not difficult. Okay, so the form realm beings have the form realm state of mind, right? So if you have a human being here who's doing serenity meditation and attains serenity, their body is still in the form realm. But once they've attained serenity, they're at what's called the access level right below the first form realm, or the first dhyana.
Just to clarify, you just said that their body is still in the form.
Their body's in the desire realm, sorry. Their body's in the desire realm because they still have a human body. But their mind now is what's called the access level to the first dhyana, which means that they're almost at the first dhyana mentally. Yeah? As they practice more, then they can get up into the first dhyana mentally. They practice more, they can go to the second, they can go to the third, they can go to the fourth. Okay? So those are the spheres of consciousness that somebody in the human realm can develop. In fact, a human being can still be in the human realm, have a human body, and develop the formless spheres of consciousness. When they enter very, very deep states where they're completely focused. In the form realm, your objects of meditation are infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, neither discrimination nor non-discrimination. I mean, you're really up there in terms of your object isn't just like a visual image of the Buddha. It's all of a sudden this incredible, vast, uniform object. Yeah. So a human being can even get up to those very high levels in the formless realm. However, those high levels in the formless realm are not considered optimal for meditating on emptiness or meditating on bodhicitta or on anything else, because you are too spaced out in your meditation. Your mind is too withdrawn, to inward. Okay? So, bodhisattvas will develop those states of meditation because they develop everything. But, when you're trying to combine your concentration and insight, then it's usually with your mind being in one of the form realm absorptions. Okay, one of the dhyanas. Even though you're human, you still have your human body. Okay, so you're getting what I mean? Yeah? So that person at that time, that meditator, when they're in meditation, their sphere of consciousness, let's say, is the first dhyana. When they come out, again, now their desire realm mind is functioning again because they're, they can read and they're walking around and things like that. But they have attained the first dhyana, sphere of consciousness. Okay? So that's just something to bear in mind as we're, what we're doing this, and why it's so important to have renunciation and bodhicitta and wisdom, some familiarity with these kinds of things when you're doing the serenity meditation, because what happens to many non-Buddhist meditators, okay, your motivation is to get these deep states in either the form realm or the formless realm because they're so peaceful. Okay? In the form realm, you feel this incredible rapture. Then you go to just feeling equanimity, which feels even better. In the formless realm, you're just completely, you never have any contact with physical form at all. It's just really great, so they say. So your motivation is to attain some of those really comfortable, pleasant, states of consciousness. So you may practice all these methods to generate concentration, generate those levels, and then because you don't have renunciation or wisdom or bodhicitta, in your next life you get born as a being in that realm. Okay? So you attain that realm of, that sphere of consciousness when you're a human being. Then at the time of death, let's say as a human being you obtain the fourth dhyana. Yeah? You have no renunciation of samsara or anything, so you love that state of the fourth dhyana. It feels great. That's why you attain concentration. So then you get born in that fourth dhyana in your next life. Yeah. And then you're so blissed out in your meditation, or in fourth dhyana they have this incredible equanimity feeling that's just so superb that you don't want to meditate on renunciation and bodhicitta and wisdom. Because it just feels too good to stay in the states of samadhi. Yeah. So you're born there due to your level of samadhi, due to that karma that you created as a human being to be born there. You have that lifespan, which is longer than our human lifespan. You enjoy it, but when that karma is over, then some other karma ripens. And plunk you go down into other realms of samsara. Yeah? Maybe as a human being, maybe as an animal, who knows what karma ripens at the end of that rebirth in the form and formless realm. But here we are again. So that's why it's so important to, have the motivation of renunciation, to try and do some meditation of bodhicitta, some meditation on wisdom, so that when we gain those states of dhyana, we don't just get so attached to them that then we get reborn into them. Okay? Making some sense? Yeah, the masters always emphasize that. So I think there must be some reason, It must be because those states feel so good that you really just don't want to come. And if you read, in the Pali scriptures, the Buddha describes what it's like to attain it, just even in the form realms. You can imagine what it's like in the form realm. It just feels like your body is just drenched in bliss, So, that's kind of easy to get attached to, isn't it?
Especially for desire well-being.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, I'm going to stop here. In the next session, I'm going to go into the 5 hindrances. Okay, just to give you a preview of what they are. I know you don't have any idea what the 5 hindrances are, do you?
You don't want to hear about it.
You don't want to hear about them. You just want to have them in your mind.
No.
You don't want to even have them in your mind, then you have to hear about them. If you don't want to have them, you have to learn what they are so you can counteract them. First one, sensual desire. Anybody have that? Second one, malice or ill will. Okay. How about dullness and drowsiness? Who, me? Restlessness and regret? Deluded doubt? Okay, that is a preview of coming attractions. But it's just helpful to know that, the Buddha said, yes, these are 5 hindrances you have. Everybody in the desire realm has them. Okay? So don't freak out about it.